All right, Amber. So, what is a public matter or public matters for this week?
So we are going to, I guess you're going to wrap up is it the debt or the budget, or is there a difference between the two?
Yeah, I want to talk about that a little bit. I'm going to give a couple of names out of Republicans that actually voted for this debt deal, and I think there's a little issue there with, what conservatives are supposed to be standing for, and so I want to make people aware that maybe don't know some of the Republicans that actually voted for this, and they probably know there's some, but I want to point out a couple that you might be surprised with. So I do want to do that, and I want to talk about not only that, but I want to talk about the ATF's rule on your pistol braces.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. And then we have, we're going to go into the Group of 30, or G30.
Yes.
And which will tie into the World Bank. It'll also tie into, I think it's called the International Monetary Fund. And there's another one, I think it's the International Development Association. So it's also a different side of a banking avenue,
Right.
which also leads you back to the World Economic Forum. But that's a different one. We'll tap into DACA, which was originally the DREAM Act, but there's really not a lot of data on it unless I spend hours upon hours doing a bunch of research that I don't have. And then last but not least, we're going to touch on the Fed Now, which will be released ironically right around July 4th.
Oh my God. You think that they do that on purpose?
I don't know. So they say you're, what is it, celebrating Independence Day. In reality, they're taking one of your independence away.
Yeah, they're taking some of your liberty away on Independence Day. Isn't that great?
It's fantastic.
You don't think they do this on purpose?
No, they don't know what
You conspiracy theorists.
They don't know what that is.
Yeah. So,
So you want to go over the budget?
oh, you want me to start?
Yeah, you can start.
All right. Yeah. Let me. So they passed the budget deal. McCarthy passed the budget deal. The liar that he is. And I'll say that for a fact. I believe that McCarthy is a sellout, and this is one of the reasons why. If you believe what I believe, anyway, if you have that sense, your senses are probably correct. I believe he's a sellout, saddling us with just more and more debt, because there is really no debt ceiling. But what I wanted to cover on this was there are, believe it or not, Republicans who did vote for this. And the surprising part of this is, in my opinion, on these people who did vote for it, is who did. Did you know that Jim Jordan of Ohio voted for this?
I didn't.
I question, I don't know what his reasons for voting on it were or are, but he did. He voted for this. Excuse me. And Marjorie Taylor Greene also voted for this. I have a problem with what they present themselves as and what it seems like their voting record is. Again, like McCarthy, he claims to be this. He said some great things, and we've all watched the various hearings with Jim Jordan, who I think he's a lion. But is he just going for some sort of sound bites? Is he just making himself look good to various conservatives, and then he turns around and stabs us in the back, economically? And that's my concern there. I have a big concern about that. So I wanted to bring up those two names in relation to the budget deal. That is a real concern of mine. I guess I'll leave it up. I won't go down through the list. I was going to go down through a list of Republicans that voted for it, but I really don't think that's necessary. I'll leave it up to the viewers, but I think it's important that you might want to look at your representatives if you are on. But there were Democrats as well, which is a little bit surprising.
That voted against it?
That did vote against it. So I'll leave it up to the viewers to to figure this out. But those two stood out to me, and there were others. But the brevity of the show, I won't go into it. But look at your representatives and how they voted. Question them. Don't let it go. If you're concerned about it, this may not go anywhere, but you need to do something. This is a whole point of what Amber and I do. You've got to do something. You can't sit back. Conservatives are just historically sit back and make no waves and think that voting, you're going to change things just purely by voting. And I don't believe that's going to be possible.
No, not really. I mean, you're going to have to, or people are going to have to act on something, because it just seems to be a dwindling spiral of craziness that keeps happening. You know, your freedoms are being lost or exchanged for other things, and getting them back is a lot harder than having them and not losing them. So, like, for instance, with the whole, is it a butt stock? Is that the problem?
The pistol brace.
So the pistol brace.
Yes, the pistol brace.
Is the problem with the ATF now.
Yeah, one of many. Yes.
So I don't actually understand who the ATF is.
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. It's another agency.
So I guess my question is, who creates these agencies?
The government has, just like we created Homeland Security.
Which is not Homeland Security, but whatever. We
created Homeland Security. It's another agency that we've created, and because of something that took place in 1946, which is called the Administrative Procedure Act, which was it's called the APA, and what it did is it allowed agencies to enact regulations and then enforce them. So it basically became part of the they're actually under the executive branch of the government because they're created by the president. So, but they act as essentially all three branches of the government when they come up with these regulations. And I don't believe it's constitutional.
Do people get to vote on these regulations?
No, not at all.
Okay, so we don't get to vote as to what these regulations are.
None of these things are voted on. That's why it's taken the place of Congress, which I think it's unconstitutional. And maybe a lot of people out there don't realize that these agencies were created for various purposes. All sounds great, they got these agencies, they got to work on behalf of the American people and, protect us. And
I mean, the theory is awesome. The practical is very different.
Right, and I believe it's unconstitutional as well. We'll go into this a little later at another time, maybe, that the final arbiters of the Constitution is not the Supreme Court. And that's not my words. That comes from the Founding Fathers. But we'll touch on that in another show. But so let's talk about these braces, these pistol braces, and I got to digress a little bit. So we got to go back to when firearms were really starting to be regulated, which came in 1934, the National Firearms Act, the NFA. And the NFA, it's pretty comprehensive, so I'm just going to be touching, it's like the 1,000-foot level view of the NFA in regards to this. So in 1934, they basically started making things, they understood that the Second Amendment, they couldn't make things illegal necessarily, but because there was no agencies at that point like this, but they said, Congress said they were going to have the National Firearms Act where they were going to prevent machine guns and some other things. And I think this had to do with the gangsters and so forth being, the FBI was outgunned and,
right.
And it made it difficult for them. So they wanted to get an upper hand. So in 1934, they enacted this, but there was a time there before it was enacted, there was some lobbying that went on. And they were, like I said, they were trying to prevent various things like machine guns and and other weapons that they thought they were up against that they wanted to have the upper hand on as law enforcement. And so one of the first things that happened was a lobbyist group got together, and before this was enacted into law, they said, this is a little ridiculous, because this kind of includes pistols as well. And and they said, oh, we can't do that. So they kind of pulled that out of it because pistols can be concealed and so forth. They had the machine gun aspect of it. So in 1936, I believe it was, they had, there was a group that was manufacturing 22 rifles, which at that time was it's sort of like the AR-15 platform.
Yeah.
22s were very, very common. And the National Firearm Act said that, because they wanted to get rid of pistols, and there was a lobby against that, they said, okay, well, because you could, if you're going to get rid of pistols, what we'll do is we'll cut down rifles and shotguns.
Right.
Which is kind of gangly to use, but it was kind of a loophole. So they said, well, these things, a shotgun and a rifle can be the barrel can be no longer than 18 inches.
Right.
And so this group got together, was manufacturing 22s, and they said, wait a minute here, this is going to affect us. And they said, well, 22s aren't really a threat to us, and they're just plinkers, people use them for small game, squirrels and rabbits and so forth. So they exempted 22 rifles, and they said the rifles for 22s could be as short as 16 inches. Okay, so now we have an exemption. Well, not exemption, but we have an exception here that that we're going to get rid of machine guns and some other things, and we're going to now allow 22s to be 16 inches. Shotguns could be 18 inches, no shorter. And so the loophole there was they were trying to get rid of that loophole there with short-barreled rifles, anything under 18 inches, with the exception of 22s. So they opened up a real can of worms for themselves going forward. Oh, excuse me. So that was all well and fine. So 1963 was a pivotal year that really impacted the next part of this. Was surplus World War II M1 carbines. They surplused millions of them. I say millions. There was a bunch anyway. And these were semi-automatic. I know there's an M2 version out there that was fully automatic, but they were surplusing the M1 carbines, which were primarily semi-automatic rifles. But in doing so, somebody discovered that, geez, the barrel length on these is going to be in complete violation of the NFA of 1934. Because the barrel length was 17 3/4 inches long. So in 1968, they made some changes. And in 1968, they said, okay, we're gonna say that everything now has to be 16 inches. All rifles can be no shorter than 16 inches.
Okay.
That allowed them to continue selling these surplus M1 carbines. And then fast forward, you have the AR-15 platform becomes very popular. And
can you make an M2 without registering it? Like, can you do that, or is that no? That's not.
That's for a separate show because I can yes and no, but that's for a separate show. Yes and no. Okay, yes so and no.
You can possibly make the M2s
because there was conversion kits that are not really in violation, but there are some purpose-built M2s. At the end of World War II, they built some purpose-built M2s that were NFA. They would fall under the NFA that said they're machine guns because they were select fire. Now, there were some that had, they weren't purpose-built, but they were modified. And it falls into this weird category of like the definition of a machine gun and the trigger mechanism and so forth that are technically, although they're automatic, they are not in violation of the NFA, but the ATF would say it. But I'm digressing. Okay. So in 1968, they changed it. They said these things can be 16 inches. So we get into the AR-15 platforms, and people start realizing the AR-15 platform is highly modifiable, and there's a whole culture around the AR-15 platforms. And I know there's some people out there that don't care for AR-15 platforms. I think they're great. You can do so many things with them. So people start building AR-15 pistols, which are pistols. So then somebody comes out with this idea that the AR-15 pistol can be the stock of it, or they come up with a brace for it specifically for the purpose of accuracy for somebody who is has a disability.
Okay.
And the ATF basically says these things are fine to go. It's not a problem. It's not a problem because it's just a brace. But apparently they look like a stock, and they can be used as a stock. So now they're saying it's a short-barreled rifle that is smaller than 16 inches. Remember they changed the...
Oh, that's right.
So now these things are becoming, they said, again, these agencies based on, the 1946 ruling, it's called the Administrative Procedure Act, which allows agencies to come up with their own regulations and becomes part of law, which is not really law.
Right.
So these things are now going to be registered. The ATF on May 31st, except for people that fell under these injunctions, you have to register them. And we can go into a whole thing about what I feel about registering any firearm, but don't make any assumptions based on what I'm saying right now. But that's what's going on right now with this SBR stuff, as short barrel rifles, and it's quite a these agencies are just running crazy because these agencies are being pushed by agendas. Mm-hmm. And this is another weapon, in my opinion, this is another weaponizing of agencies using their power under the ADA to enact, in essence, laws. And everybody ought to be aware of what's going on with all agencies right now. And in my opinion, I don't care if it was a Republican doing this or a Democrat, that this should not be happening. And I encourage anybody that's viewing this to look into it and make your own decision of whether or not you want to comply with this legislation. Right now, they estimate there's between 10 million and 40 million of these pistol braces out there for the short-barreled rifle. It creates a short-barreled rifle, according to ATF. There's 10 to 40. So that would be, let's just say that one person owned one brace. It's going to make a lot of people a criminal. And right now, I think about 255,000 people have complied with registering their firearm.
Wow. That's right a lot, actually.
It's a lot, and the number is a lot, and I don't know how much it'll grow because everybody after the 31st of May, which just passed, is now
it's 2023.
Yeah, they're essentially now a criminal unless you were under these injunctions. Unless you were part of these injunctions, just apply only to certain groups who fall under these injunctions that filed these lawsuits. And I won't go into that, but I'll leave it to the viewers. So it's about 0.6% of the overall number, whether it's 10 million or 40 million, that are in violation right now. There's a shit ton. Can I swear?
Yeah.
That are in violation of the law. So the people who are out there right now, if you weren't aware of this, I hope I simplified this to some degree. If you have any questions, put it in the comment section. But that's what's going on with these short-barreled rifles and these pistol braces. And the real problem here isn't just this. It's the bigger picture here of these agencies acting on their own, but really under political pressure. And you got to ask yourself, and please research this, because this is what we're about. Public Matters right here is about your constitutional rights. And we believe that this is a violation of constitutional rights to have agencies to enact these in essence, laws. and it's awful, and it's going to get worse. I see it getting worse, and it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or if it's a Democrat. It really doesn't matter. But this is a tool primarily of the left. So be aware of what's going on, and that's what I'm saying here. Be aware of your constitutional rights, and never give up. Don't stop writing your congressional delegation. Don't stop, even though we say in here, like where we are, there's no point in writing and stuff. It's not. Don't give up. Don't ever give up the fight. Don't ever give up the fight for your rights. Don't lose them. Don't ever give up your rights. Even when they pass laws that. Don't give it up. Continue the fight. Let them know that you know. And I think that's important. And I think that's why Amber and I are here. Well, that is why we're here, because we felt like our voices weren't getting heard. So, we haven't gone into our background too much.
No, but so we have a short period of time that I wanted to go over.
Can I finish one last thing?
Yes, go right ahead.
All right, I wanted to go after one last thing here, which will tie into the term insurrection. And I wanted to tie this in. And everybody has probably heard that there was a dam that was blown up over in...
I actually didn't hear this, but go ahead.
Oh, you didn't hear this.
I didn't.
See, this is the problem with major media. You got to stop watching...
No news.
Yeah, you're watching the wrong news. So the Nova, if I pronounce this right, the Nova Kakova Dam was blown up.
Where is that?
It's in, what was southern Ukraine, but is in a territory that had been taken over. It's just north of Crimea, a southern part of Ukraine that's in Russian territory. And the dam was blown up, and there's some significance to this. And I'll tie this into something here. And I've stole this information from a guy that has his name is, it begins with a T and his last name begins with a C. So, but it's important. I'm going to tie this into something, which is of my own, because everybody looks at other people's material and gets something from it. So I got this from Tucker Carlson, if you couldn't figure that out.
I think they did.
So the dam was blown up. Each side is blaming the other, but I don't think that Putin shot himself in the foot, because this affects it affects Crimea more than it would affect the flooding from this dam being blown up. It involves a power plant that primarily feeds Russian territory right now, I think exclusively, to be honest with you. There's also an environmental impact of this, some 300, I don't know the measuring units, I think it's 300 tons of petroleum products that was in the powerhouse there at hydroelectric dam. Not to mention the flooding, the evacuation. But to say that Putin would do this, he'd be shooting himself in the foot like, the Nord Stream pipelines that were blown up. He was shooting himself in the foot. Make your own determination on whether you think he did it or not. I don't believe he was involved in this, because he was going to be shooting himself in the foot bad, because you have the, down in Crimea, that's where the Black Sea Fleet is home ported, in Crimea. So this greatly affects the Russian territory. He would not shoot himself in the foot, in my opinion. It's nice for the other side to say it. The guy there, Zelensky, who used to play a piano on stage with his penis. Look that up. You can see it.
Yeah, you talk about that.
Yeah. So you tell me who's more ethical here. Pick your side there, but I think it's pretty obvious.
Oh, so we got a lesser of two evils.
Yeah, the funny thing is, we could do a whole show. We could do a whole show on so many things that we just touch on here. So anyway, this dam was blown up, and it's affecting. It's also going to the southern region that it does affect in Ukraine is going to be affecting fertilizer production. Mm-hmm. Ding, ding, ding.
Oh, food.
Food. It touches on that.
So the food shortage is actually a thing now.
So I don't think that Putin had anything to do with this. But Tucker Carlson had said there's a word here that comes up, and he brought it up in his show, and I wanted to share this with you because you are aware of the left saying certain things over and over again. There's a word, it's called tautology. It's tautology, and I'll read you the definition. It's an empty or vacacious statement composed of simple statements in a fashion that makes it logically true whether the simple statements are factually true or false. And they give an example here. It's either going to rain tomorrow or will not. Think of how many times you've heard on the news certain statements that don't ring true to you, but they keep saying them over and over and over and over again. And Putin is bad and Zelensky's good, and this war is good for us and it's bad for Russia, and so forth. If something clicks in your mind that these things that they keep saying over and over, it doesn't matter if it's left or right, research it. Research what they're saying, because this is a tool, and it's primarily used by the left for just saying things that are illogical. It's illogical to say that Putin did this because it really hurts him more than anything else. He would not have done it. And I think that's the important part of this right now, is the fact that that terminology is what I want to take out of it. Whether or not he blew it up, or, I don't know. But the important part here, the phrase that comes out of this about the term tautology. Say it and say it, say it. Tautology is the point. And they use it, particularly on the left. If you listen to the radio broadcasts or anything on the news, they keep saying the same things. It's like they're all in lockstep saying these things where the facts don't seem to match what they're saying. You can see it, you can research it, and it doesn't match.
So wait, it's kind of like the 9/11, whenever they interviewed certain people. And, oh wait, what about BBC that announced that the building collapsed before it actually collapsed?
Any of those things that say, they just repeat the same phrases over and over and over again. You could go to the budget deal, you can go to anything. The terminology here is the same. And be aware, when the government or a government agency or a politician, they all are saying the same kind of thing, you should be aware that there's a problem here, a potential problem. And I'm illustrating that through this dam fiasco that's going on right now. That's an issue right there. So those are the little things. Let's go back to the debt, for instance. And again, we always like to bring this around to the Constitution. And I want to talk about the Founding Fathers in reference to, again, the debt ceiling and the people who voted to raise the debt ceiling. And this is from President Franklin Pierce in 1854, and he vetoed a measure to help the mentally ill. And no, he wasn't a founding father. This ties back in because, we've talked about benevolence and so forth not being a part of the government, Madison mentioning that. But even in 1854, President Pierce was going back to what was in the Constitution, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, the writings of the Founding Fathers. It was very well known. This is what he said in relation to this measure to help the mentally ill in 1854. I cannot find any authority in the Constitution for public charity. To approve this measure would be contrary to the letter and the spirit of the Constitution and subversive to the whole theory upon which the union of these states is founded. And then I would like to talk here, going back to James Madison, who I referenced, the father of the Constitution. Elaborating upon this limitation in a letter to James Robertson, about the limitations of government and spending. With respect to the two words, general welfare, people have talked about welfare, again, a benevolent things. I have always regarded them as qualified by the detail of the powers connected to them. So the general welfare doesn't talk about general welfare. It's not welfare as you would think. Again, you've got to go back to what they were referring to in the Constitution and the meaning of welfare back then. They were not talking about giving away money. It was the general well-being. And he said, I have always regarded them qualified by the detail of the powers connected with them. To take them in a literal and unlimited sense would be a metamorphosis of the Constitution into a character which there is a host of proofs was not contemplated by its creators. Welfare, as we talk about it today, is no part of our Constitution. There is no authority under Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution for benevolence. It does not exist. It's been going on for years. And don't believe any part of your legislature that says that on the federal level, that giving away money for disaster relief or anything is any part of the Constitution. I want to press that point. And I guess I'm going to close with that, and you can take over, because I think Milo's probably going to come back and give his opinion too.
Yeah, Milo is pretty testy about the rain.
Pretty testy about it. He doesn't like government spending is what it is.
Oh,
He was crying about government spending because Milo thinks, and he knows, that the more money we spend on inflation is less treats that he gets.
Exactly.
He understands economics.
Very simple.
Yeah.
It's very easy, economics.
So anyway, I've talked enough. Go ahead.
All right, so I guess now I'll go into my piece on group of 30. So it doesn't I mean, I guess it ties into the budget in the sense that, like, do we really have a budget? I mean, does it really matter?
We don't have a budget. There is.
Like, does it actually make a difference what we vote on, who votes on what?
No.
Because, like, so we have the Group 30, which was established in 1978. It's an independent global body comprised of economic, financial leaders from the public and private sector and academia. It aims to deepen understanding of global economics, financial issues, and to explore the international repercussions of decisions taken in the public and private sectors. So the group is characterized by the extensive experience of its members and open-minded and forward-thinking.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is, but so we have open-minded and forward-thinking. Mm-hmm. Those tie into very different groups that we also have infiltrating into our society.
Which?
So would be the DEI, which is diversified, inclusion. No, what's the E? Diversified.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, so
DEI.
it's equity. So and inclusion. So that would be part of this. Mm-hmm. Essentially umbrella group.
Right.
Okay. So this group is a global body that works and understands or anyone's actual, it's not just it's actual world's economics.
Right.
So what they do is they do projects or work studies, and they examine different economic things. So right now they are working on, I believe it's Latin America, and finding out how the pandemic affected the economics of Latin America. Now, these people that they choose to be in committees and work studies are anyone from, very wealthy to people in the academia world, regardless of where they are, people who are on committees or agencies from other places. So they are different people that come together for a greater good for our behalf. That's the idea. They
get money from our tax dollars eventually?
Right, yes. Yeah. So here we have, so they get money from 100 and I believe it's 88
countries.
Different, they're not countries. They say they're supporters.
Okay.
Okay, so they are different banks and different resources that they use. So other countries that are, the newest one that just became a member of this group is the Afghanistan Bank, which became a member in 2020.
Who's in charge of Afghanistan right now? Is it the Taliban?
It might be. So they decided to join this group. But we have, so then what happens is this group decides, okay, cool, so this economy needs more money.
Mm-hmm.
We need to pump them with more money. So then they give out grants and trusts and different funds to these countries. So the World Bank was created. But mind you, the World Bank was actually created before this group was created.
Right.
So this group, or the World Bank, which you can find the data of background of the World Bank on the Council on Foreign Relations.
Right.
So they're going to tell you the background of the World Bank group.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a family of 5 multilateral institutions focusing on economic development, whose overarching mission is global poverty reduction.
Reduction.
Poverty reduction. Now, I would like to see the statistics, which I've not looked at, nor have I been able to find, on how this World Bank group has helped poverty on different countries. Because it's been established by Western powers in 1944. So Western powers, so mostly us and different countries, right?
That was in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire.
Correct. And the World Bank was originally tasked with rebuilding the economy of post-war Europe.
Right.
So for more than 70 years, it has expanded and reached nearly all of the world's developing countries.
Now, when they give money to these countries, who oversees what they do with it? Does anybody?
I don't know who oversees what they do with it. The World Economic Forum does play a role in how they're able to use it and what they use it for. Ironically, the agencies that we have in our government are also funded sometimes by these different banks. So the bank maintains more than 2,600 projects as of right now. So that is helping different places. Doing different things. They are helping different countries. Now they're giving them money, they're making grants, they use trusts, they funnel money basically however they can.
Right.
Now they use, ironically, 189 banks, which happens to be part of the Group 30, which also the Group 30 happens to be part of the World Economic Forum. So you have I guess it would be like a spider web or a bounce back where each one are connected, but they are infiltrated in different ways. So since 2019, the bank has been led by a former U.S. Treasury Department official.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
So one of our U.S. Department officials is in charge of this bank.
And they fall under the umbrella of the World Economic Forum under Klaus Schwab's?
Yes. So the World Economic Forum is the one that helps out because they do the research for these different countries and impoverished nations and these, world things. Now, the World Economic Forum also plays a role in the social credit score of businesses.
Oh, CEI.
Correct. So they are also the ones that have decided that FedNow would be our best option. So so I guess the main reason that the World Bank was established in 1944 was to help rebuild Europe and Japan after World War II. It was the official name is the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development.
Right.
So it had 38 members in 1946 when it was established. And I didn't actually look at the members to see like who and what the members are of what they started, like originally who they were. But you can kind of go back to that and look and see how people have become part of this particular group of people.
Now, let me ask you a question. So you've been looking at this a little bit. this CEI, which in my opinion has become some sort of economic fascism, where these banks will lend money based on how you are, the credit score thing.
Yeah.
So if your country is not so much into, this, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, on the corporate, even the corporate level. So, they're less willing to probably give you money as a country.
Yes.
If you would you not call that some sort of economic fascism?
Oh, I would totally call it that. I mean,
Yeah.
How is it that we have these 38 members, we'll say? Because I don't know. I'm assuming that the original member group hasn't changed, like the number.
Right.
So I'm assuming that those seats are always present.
Right.
So we're saying 38 people get to decide where this money is going and who it's going to.
Right.
Now, I find it a bit ridiculous that we aren't able to vote on where our tax dollars are spent.
Yeah. So, we've all heard of the World Economic Forum, and we've seen some of the crazy things that have been said there by Klaus Schwab's.
Oh yeah, he's got ridiculous things, but everyone takes what he says and does it.
Now, do they have any secret meeting places that I think I've heard about? Isn't there a couple of places that these groups have met? We've got the.
Oh yeah, they've met in different places. So I know that Alex Jones has been to a few of them. I know G. Edward Griffin wrote about the Jekyll Island.
Jekyll Island, off in Georgia.
Right, which is another one. They do, but what's funny is that they do these summits, which are what everyone can see. So the World Economic Forum does summits, and they tell you, hey, we're doing this summit on global warming. We're doing this summit on plastic pollution. We're doing this summit on, and so they tell you these, quote, summits that they're doing. But what they're not telling you is that they do have secret places. So there's
Jekyll Island.
Bohemian Grove. There was another one, I think, in New Hampshire. Ironically, they're usually around the United States.
Yeah, Bohemian Grove, Jekyll Island, both in the United States.
Right, and then I forget there's another
Switzerland,
one.
there's...
Well, that one's a summit, but I think
that's the one that's public.
Right, that's a summit.
Yeah, that's a summit,
So-
and these
so
people
the
like Trudeau
secret-
has been there,
Right, so, and here's the thing. They don't, with the summits, people can go to and
So it's a window dressing for everybody.
right, so this is like, what is it, is it like the door, like the Wizard of Oz, where it's like the smoke and mirrors, and like the guy
pull the curtain back, pull the
there's
curtain
a
back of the
little-
wizard.
Yeah. So basically, we get to see the summit, and we're like, "Wow, so amazing! Look how many leaders are there. This is so This is so great." But in reality, that's just for show.
Right.
We don't actually get to see what happens,
Right.
and we don't actually get to see what takes place before that summit.
Correct.
So here's the thing: they have all of this money from 188 banks, countries, and trusts. So 188 isn't just like banks of Afghanistan or Bank of America or Bank of France or the Central Bank of Finland or whatever. It's also people like trusts, like very wealthy trust funds are also being funneled into the World Bank. So you have a lot of funds that don't need to be accounted for.
Right.
That's why a lot of times when they give this money, it's actually free.
Now,
They have no interest loans.
Now they also have political influences, so that money is spent on their objectives through each country's national treasuries, right? Like we spend money on things that the World Economic Forum, for instance, thinks is important.
Right, and so what's funny is the latest thing that, what's his name?
Klaus Schwab's?
Yes. So he just released or said or whatever, I guess it wasn't just, but he said that he really likes how China has been doing and using and making their economic work and do, and he wants to start having countries follow China's lead. Now I find that a bit fishy in the sense that we're losing our ground as the central currency for the United World or United Nations or how I don't remember how you word it. There's a specific wording for it. But our currency, which I mean, I get it. As you look through, there's ebbs and flows in currency and countries moving and losing places.
Right.
But the thing that is fishy is that it's sounding like China is so fantastic that we all should be like China, we should do like China, and we should just let China be the one that's dictating, which is the key word. I mean, this is what also leads into the next thing. So we have the Fed now, which, mind you, okay, so...
I don't know anything about the Fed now.
So the Fed now is actually a...
It's the Federal Reserve?
Right. So the Fed now is I guess, a division of the Federal Reserve Financial Services. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, Federal Reserve is only as federal as the word federal. It's actually not part of our Constitution, our government, or anything. It is actually a separate
just a bunch of banks.
Entity
Yep.
that has nothing to do with America.
Right.
So this whole Fed Now program is a joke in the sense that you are going to be tracked in all your purchases. Because, so the UK just did it. It's not called Fed Now, it's some other currency. Mm-hmm. I forget what I actually don't know what theirs is called. But they did it, and you can't spend more than 1,000, well, I'd say dollars, but it's whatever the UK is using. So you can't spend more cash or paper than $1,000. If you do, you can. She called it. I don't know what the fine is. Well, there's a fine.
But you're in trouble.
There's a fine. You're put on a gray list, I think it was called. I think that's what she said, because it was their financial advisor that they use. She said, you can do it, but you'll be put on the gray list. So I don't know what that is. But you then also will be fined. There will be jail time and other repercussions.
So if you don't involve the government in your transaction, you're in trouble.
Right, anything over $1,000. So basically what's going to happen now, if you think about it in reality, people are going to say something doesn't cost $1,000 in paper. It's going to be $1,000, and then they say, okay, well, it's 47 shoes.
Right.
And then you pay $1,000 for each of those shoes.
Right.
You know, it's going to go back to the barter system.
Sure. Underground.
So we're not going to, so there's going to be a steampunk kind of style of life for how you buy and sell goods that you don't want to be tracked. Because, I mean, this makes no sense. Why would you want the government to track your funds? Because basically, so what it'll go is...
Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, what's the problem?
I just don't want the government in my pocket. I don't give a fuck if I'm doing something wrong. So it goes like this. So you have the bank. So you, and then you have the government, and then you have you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so... You spend Amazon, government knows, because it goes you, government, Amazon. Then it goes, you went and dropped off money at the bank. Well, it doesn't go you, bank. It goes you, bank, government, bank. So it's like this whole web of confusion just so that they can track and get more money from you.
Do you think they'll tie in, we know we have a corporate... corporate equity and include it's a credit score for corporations. Do you think that's going to filter down through this now? Now that they're involved in everything you do, when we get around to it, it'll come to the United States. It's right on our doorsteps.
Right.
Do you think that'll involve, a credit score for each one of us? Who are you associating with it? Who are you buying from? Do you think this will have an influence on a individual credit score here in the United States?
Of course. So basically, what will happen is that I find it to be a bit fancy in the sense that I think technology will actually start to take a step
Mhm.
back. So what people will do, because this will go down to what you do with your phone, what you do with your watch,
Yeah.
what you do on your computer, it will actually start to regress, and
Right.
we will no longer use that as our service.
Mm-hmm.
We will go back to pen and paper and do a cash ledger.
Mhm.
We will no longer use banks. I mean, we'll go back to putting money into our mattresses. We will go back to buying by gold and silver.
Right.
I mean, those are the only untraceable items.
Right.
I mean, even like, like
So
someone,
become a really true back to the bartering system, even if it doesn't involve cash. If
right.
it'll be a bartering system.
Right. So we will now go back to original, I would say, Roman or
Right.
Greek time frame where you had shells or
Sure.
you had leaves or seeds.
Whatever you were trading.
Whatever was trading and whatever system of currency worked at that time.
Isn't that something?
Well, I find it amusing that it's a full circle at this point. And then, so, which also, I will say, I have a few more minutes. It gives me hope to think that it can go full circle,
Mhm.
which in theory would give you the idea that though getting your rights, because we've lost many of them with the Homeland Security, with the Patriot Act, with the IRS, and quite a few others, I feel like if this does happen, it starts to put a pressure on the people to go back to grassroots.
Mm.
And it goes
Absolutely.
back to the idea of what's true. So as much of the family dynamic that they're destroying,
Right.
they're going to push us back to our families, and we're going to have to make,
For some of us.
I think for a lot of us.
Yeah.
I mean, there are more.
Do you think a lot of people comply, or there'd be a lot of people that resist it?
So here's the
You
thing.
would resist it, wouldn't you?
I would definitely resist it.
I think I would as well.
So the thing is that like you would just start to have to find your group. So it'd be like the 80s without the cell phones. So like you found out where your friends were. You always knew where your friends were, regardless if you called them or you spoke to them. You just knew your friends were at so and so's house because maybe somebody said something at 4 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the like afternoon.
You'll find ways around this.
Right. So there will be with the hope that things will go back to, we already have the Constitution. It doesn't need to be changed.
Yeah.
We just need to go back to what the original documents state.
Good point.
So the point is that like all of this stuff is very scary and kind of hard to think with and very hard to even confront.
Mhm.
But if you think about, okay, mankind, I think, is genuinely good.
Mhm.
And so they will find a way to make what's right.
Right.
Now, do I think that there are very awful people running things? Yes. But we do have the documents that say what they say and that are true and that have been workable for this many years.
Right.
So there's nothing, like we don't have to sit down like the Founding Fathers did and write it all out and then discuss it. It's already written for us. We just have to go back to what it said. Right. And we have to make true what was said.
Right.
So I think that the hope is that you just have to go back to the original writings and follow suit.
Right.
Not all the new stuff, not the president who's now president, not the president from even 10 years ago. I mean, I'm talking about like 17th century. Like we go all the way back. And and of course, I'm not talking about slavery and all of that, because if you read the Constitution, it actually talks about that there should be no slaves. And they put a stop to it. And the reason they took a while to... Right, and the reason that they put a time frame on the stop of the Constitution was because they needed to figure out how to handle the work that those people were doing.
Right.
I mean, they're not stupid. They're not going to destroy their economy.
They gave a pathway to freedom, saying everybody is created equal.
Right, and then they gave a timeline, if you look, to when you had to stop and change and move and make things different. They didn't make it so that it was an erupted economic crisis, which is what we're headed for. Like we are literally headed for, and I feel like I sound like Alex Jones a bit, like we are headed for. But like I feel that
have a raspy enough voice.
I don't. I feel that it's too high pitched. We're headed for quite a debacle. But I think if we just stick true to the values of what a family is and what the Constitution is, that people will be okay.
Right.
And people will survive. But
so you're saying don't give up.
Of course I'm saying that.
Don't give up.
I'm not going to give you a very horrible story and tell you all of these awful things and then not give you a rainbow at the end of it. There is a pot of gold at the end. It just takes a long time to get to.
You're optimistic too.
I am.
But don't give up.
I think that it is a way that can be, like, there definitely is an out to what is happening here. It doesn't look like it, and it doesn't seem like it's very easy, and it's not going to be very easy. I mean, that's why the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment.
Right.
You know, like, I guess for me to end this off, I'll tie it back in. I mean, the Second Amendment says, what does the Second Amendment say? It says, some people have it memorized.
I know, I don't.
And I feel horrible.
The right of the people.
Second Amendment. Let me see.
The right of the people.
So it says, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So a well-regulated militia, that doesn't mean military.
Mm-hmm.
Militia would mean just people who are grouped together that have the same viewpoints and feel the same way.
For a militia.
Right.
Right.
That's a definition of militia. Well-regulated, they would obviously be carrying and well-armed.
Right.
But that also doesn't mean that they'll be well-armed. That also means that their group themselves is well cared for.
Oh, you have a First Amendment right to association.
Right.
Yes.
So, and I feel that these are the first major ones. So you have free speech, so we're able to talk about things that we want to talk about. Then we have the Second Amendment, which is intended to make it so people can stand up to the government of these agencies that were not put into place by the Constitution.
Right.
So, to tie it all back in is that we need to keep our guns. And
are you going to register your SBR short-barreled rifle?
Oh,
you don't even own one, do you?
That's right. I don't own any. I don't talk about it. I don't think that anyone should register it, to be honest. I don't think that it's an acceptable thing. I don't think that you should be registering your guns for the ATF. That's not even a real thing. Where does it say in the Constitution that the ATF is a real thing? I don't think it is. I'm sorry. I don't feel the FDA is a real thing. I don't feel that the ATF is a real thing. I actually don't even feel that the DMV is a real thing. But, you know, I can go on and on about what I think is real and what I think is a made up way to get your money.
We're not saying we don't comply with current law and so forth. We're just saying that we have sentiments that say that we don't constitutionally believe and that these things are legitimate.
Yes, my straw man. So that's what I have to say about today. I think it's a bit of a very treacherous topic, but there is an out and there is a way. I just don't think that...
We are so different. You're so optimistic. I don't see it like this. I just don't.
I just feel that people are genuinely good and you can make a change.
Yeah.
And that I'm not saying your vote counts, but I'm saying you as a person count. You are valid and like you 100% can make a difference. Maybe that's growing up in the 80s.
But yes, I agree that we shouldn't give up. I agree with being optimistic. I just see it differently. I guess I read Revelations too much. I see it as a descending sine wave where things will get better and then worse. But overall, it's just going to keep getting worse because of what Revelation says. And I'm not saying give up. I'm not saying that at all. And I could be incorrect. I don't know. But I just don't see it. And I do believe that people I think they're inherently evil, but I think they're generally good. I think we're inherently evil because so many people have redefined what good is. You know, good is now bad, bad is now good. So that's my opinion on that. And I respect yours.
Hey, you have yours, I have mine. I mean, I haven't seen all the things that you've seen, so. But yeah, so I think that overall, it won't be an easy, nor will it be a fast uphill climb. I mean, we're definitely on the downward side of what's happening, but I do think you can still continue to move forward and make traction with what's been given to us. I mean, we do have a very valuable piece of information. The Constitution is there for you to understand. And I mean, ironically, we are taught not to learn cursive in school, which makes it difficult for people to read and understand. The dictionaries are changing the definition of words. People are using Google instead of dictionaries. I mean, there's going to be a lot of going back old school and looking things up.
I agree with it. You know, if you want to confuse your enemy, don't use your phone, don't use the computer. Write it down in cursive, and I'll tell you, this new generation, they can't read it. And if you're delivering a hand message, they're lost. They are never going to find out your plan. So just write in cursive and walk your plan or whatever you're doing to whoever you're going to, and that's a way around this.
That's true.
Getting back to what you said, going back to the basics.
See, that's the thing, is that it's going to go back to the original. I mean, gas-powered cars, I think you should keep them.
Do you know they want you to register your garden too?
I did see that. That's a whole other topic. All right, we have to be done for today.
All right, so folks, give us some comments, please, and hit the like button. We'd like to know what you think. So please, I don't know where it's at in the front here, but please help us out. We'll bring you content that you want to hear as well. But these are things that are important to us. What do you have to say about closing? Anything?
No, that was good.
All right. Well, we got to take care of Milo because he's upset about the World Economic Forum. He's pissed.